We have a motion and a second to approve the ordinance under suspension of the rules requiring three complete and separate readings. It be read by title and published by summary. We'll start the roll call vote with you, Tim.
No.
Aye.
No.
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 The motion fails. How would the council like to proceed?
Mayor.
Wayne?
One of the other things I didn't mention was when we start looking at the layers of government, the layers of regulation, and one of the things that I know for a fact that planning and zoning does extremely well is zone. And they know when they zone something, whether it's going to be R1, R2, neighborhood business, commercial, or motor business, they know what potentially can go in there. That's the purpose of zoning. They also did an excellent job and a very long time job in doing the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan comes first. If that needs to be changed, there's a public hearing. Then the zoning comes. If the zoning is going to be changed, there's a public hearing. If the applicant doesn't like the response from planning and zoning, they can bring it to the council. There's lots of time there for public process. I feel, as I said before, that putting another layer of needing a conditional use permit puts one more layer of government regulation when it really shouldn't be necessary. If we have the zone, we know what goes in that zone, and by right it should be able to go in there. That gives definition to development. We've got a design manual that's that thick, and I don't think I can see, other than Bill's hand, maybe Art, anybody in this room, including myself, that's been from the front to the back of that design manual. But it's intent. Aaron Ness, I'm not surprised somehow. I think that would probably be true. Sue, have you been through it? I've been through about two-thirds of it. It's very, very intense, and it's very exacting. We're sitting here with, in 4 years, the Hawkins development hasn't turned a piece of dirt. Thank goodness. But when and if they ever do turn dirt over there, I can guarantee you there's not going to need any conditional use permit in Whitman County. They'll do it by right. In 1975, when the Plus Empire Mall came to Moscow, they looked at Pullman first. Pullman said, you know what? We don't want you. So they came to Moscow. And that's how we ended up with the Plus Empire Mall. Have we flipped around doing the other thing by creating layers of regulation? I'm going to make a motion.
All right, you got to wait.
I do?
We have to vote on the first one.
We did.
We did.
Oh, we did, didn't we?
Yeah. Wayne?
I lost mine.
Continue.
I'll make a motion
It's
to
Monday.
It's Monday.
to accept the recommendation from Planning and Zoning, however, minus the conditional use permit and minus the site adaptability and conversion planning. Under suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings, and it will be read by title and published by summary. And I make a motion along with that, we approve the resolution amending the LRE design manual.
With the change you included.
With the changes included.
Second.
Okay, we have Wayne's motion, we have Dan's second. Further discussion?
I just
Sue?
want to make sure he's clear. No, I'll let Sue go.
Sue?
So you're leaving in the community meeting?
Yep.
Okay. And, okay, then you wouldn't consider having the site adaptability over 100,000 square feet?
Nope.
Dan?
I just wanted to be sure, Wayne, that you put the site adaptability part in the first motion, but it's actually in the second.
Took it out.
Okay. So it's actually, no, I mean, your reference to it was in your motion for the ordinance, which it's not in the actual ordinance. It's part of the resolution,
Okay.
which is the second your second motion,
Okay?
or the second part of your motion.
Mr. City Attorney, would you like to clarify how you'd like
Well,
that?
I just think it ought to be
phrased?
clarified. The way I heard it was that the proposal was to accept the P&Z recommendation with no conditional use permit and no site adaptability plan in the design manual, that you'd vote on them at the same time. I would really suggest that you separate those if you could, so that you're voting on the ordinance, because it's confusing. There's no requirement for the 3 separate readings in the ordinance, for the design manual. So I think it'd be easier for you
Okay.
to separate if you wish.
Okay,
Wayne, does that accept you?
Yeah, I'll amend my motion then and simply say that I make a motion that we accept planning and zoning's recommendation, other than we do not have a conditional use permit, and this would be under suspension of the rules, requiring 3 complete and separate readings to be read by title and published by summary.
And I second.
Acceptable, the seconder. Okay, Wayne's motion, Dan's second. Tom, I saw your hand.
I just wanted to be clear that we were only voting on the ordinance and not the resolution also, so it sounds like that's been teased apart.
Okay, other discussion? Yes. Bill?
Madam Mayor, if I may just clarify, there is, at the request of the Administrative Committee, there was a draft of the ordinance that does not have the conditional use permit requirement for the 90,000 square feet or greater. That is in your packet as the first one that follows my memo
Right.
of September 15th. So that would be the ordinance then under Councilmember Krause's motion that you would be voting upon.
Public Works.
I'm sorry, Public Works
I
Committee.
was gonna say, I don't remember seeing it.
I just wanted
Okay.
to clarify that. So there is that ordinance that would be the legislative version without the CUP requirement in your packet.
Well, then, should I restate my motion again?
Nope.
I think
okay.
My only intent was just to clarify that there is a version of what reflects Councilmember Krause's motion in your packet.
Walter?
A question for Bill, if I may. Does the site adaptability provision in the design manual appear anywhere in the ordinance that you just said is included in our packet?
It does not.
So it doesn't,
It is completely distinct and separate from the
okay,
ordinance.
so we're not crisscrossing.
Correct. There's nothing you need to go back into the ordinance and change as a result of a change to the design manual. The design manual is referenced in the ordinance, but not that specific component of the design manual. So there's no need for any modification to the motion
Okay. Okay.
to achieve.
Walter?
Thank you, ma'am. Madam Mayor, I would offer a amendment to the motion that the item that requires the design manual review to be done by planning and zoning for expansions and LREs, expansions over 30%, be stricken, and that all design manual review be done by staff.
Okay, I hear a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
We have Walter's motion and Dan's second for the amendment. Okay. Is there discussion? Okay, Walter, you want to speak to that?
I'll vote aye.
You don't want to
I don't need to speak.
comment about why?
No, ma'am.
Okay?
There's your
Madam Mayor.
hands up over here.
Yes.
If I may, if the amendment is going to change that language, then I suggest that it would have to be considered on first reading so that staff can go and make the amendments that would be necessary to achieve that as the end. So if the amendment prevails, we come back to the original motion, and it'd be my suggestion that this then be passed on first reading so staff can make those changes, because it is not an entirely simple thing to change that. It can be done. So I don't want to mislead the council, but it is something that I think it takes more wordsmithing and revision to the ordinance than we should probably do during a meeting. So I would recommend that it be first reading, and then staff could bring back at the next meeting the revised ordinance that would reflect whatever changes the council desires to see.
Okay. Is that understood?
May or may not be understood, but I haven't agreed to it yet. A question for the city attorney,
Please?
or maybe for the mayor. Would reopening the public hearing be a component of that?
Bill?
It is not required. The hearing has been conducted, the testimony has been collected. It would just be a regular agenda item, and the council would just have a second reading of the ordinance.
But public input is discretionary, is that correct?
The hearing has been closed, so the council would need to reopen the hearing if they wish to receive additional testimony.
Right, but with that modification that was not part of the agenda?
If the council wished to have another public hearing for input on that change, then the council could certainly have that.
Okay, Randy, you have something to add?
No, I was just going to say the same thing. That's up to the council. Right now, your public hearing is over. And we would just be changing the language if this passes based upon the direction. We'd bring it back, and it would be the second reading with no expectation of a public hearing being reopened unless the council wanted that.
Okay. Okay.
And one final
Please.
clarification, and we could conclude it at the next meeting should we desire to do so and not have to go all the way to a third reading?
Yes.
Okay.
Wayne?
Bill, now, the first reading, is that strictly to his amendment or also to the original motion? Can the original
It would
motion
be
still
only
go
to
through?
the, if I may,
Yes, please.
it would only be to the amendment as presented by Councilmember Steed, because there's already a draft of the ordinance that has the CUP removed as requested by the Public Works Finance Committee, so that's already available and before the council. But additional language, as is proposed under Councilmember Steed's amendment to the motion, I think would warrant going first reading and making the changes and bringing it back at the next meeting.
So please clarify why that wouldn't be the entire ordinance then, if there's a piece of it being modified that's not complete? Randy?
Maybe, let me take a crack at it. Apparently, Bill has drafted a version of the proposal from the P&Z that includes what Councilmember Kraus wishes to do, and that's the last one in the packet. So that language has already been vetted, and it's been proposed as a version. It's just that when Councilmember Steed proposes the slight change beyond that, it requires just a little bit more delicate surgery. So we can't just excise something. It's not built in components as cleanly as the others. So what Bill is, if I can speak for Bill, he can speak for himself, what he's proposing is, because that language that Councilmember Steed is proposing isn't easily amended tonight, we just need 2 weeks to get that how you want it. You can always pass it on with the 2/3 majority that does away with the 3 readings and pass it on the second reading. We've done that before. Tonight, if the council wishes, it can and doesn't agree with the proposed amendment that Councilmember Steed has put forward, you can just pass that version that's in your packet and we're done. If you get your 2/3 majority to waive the third reading, that's of 3 readings.
Tim, do you have some input?
A question of
Please.
staff. Would it also go to committee next week before it came to council in 2 weeks?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, Walter?
Madam Mayor, with all that said, I would agree to my amendment being a first reading only motion.
Okay. And that was a seconder? Yeah? Okay. We'll start the roll call with you, Walter. Oh, Sue, did you have something to say?
Well, we were not going to discuss this at all?
I invited discussion, please.
Oh, I just wanted to, as we're looking at proposed amendments, it says, new LREs and expansions of greater than 30% would be required to conduct a community meeting. And that means any new LRE 40,000 square feet would require a community meeting? Is that, I'm sorry,
Yes.
that's my question to Bill.
That's correct.
I'm not sure that anything that small needs to have a community meeting, but
Okay, we
That's
have Walter's
Anyway.
proposed amendment
Okay.
to strike the design manual review by the Planning and Zoning Commission and instead have staff perform that. Is that accurate?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's the understanding of the seconder. We'll start the roll call vote with you, Walter.
Thank you, ma'am. Aye.
no.
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Motion carries. So that's on first reading. And now we'll go to the original motion, which was for approval of the proposed ordinance as it was crafted by Wayne with removing the conditional use permitting requirement and Then we're going to come back to the discussion with the design manual as relates to the site adaptation and conversion planning. Okay? Correct? Correct?
Yep.
Correct? Okay, we'll start with you, Tim.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Aye.
You can't waive the
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. And, yes,
close.
all right.
You've amended the proposed ordinance, but it can't be passed on with the waiver of the third reading unless I missed.
No, that was the question the council asked of you, and I was incredulous. I said, how can we pass an amendment on first reading and have the ordinance passed tonight? And
I misunderstood you, and I apologize, and I'm sorry you were
Understood.
incredulous.
Very good.
What I'm trying to
Okay.
explain
We're all
is that you
confused
can
then.
vote on the amendment, and it could come back as a first read tonight if the amendment was accepted and you did this, but you can't pass the original ordinance by waiving the three reading
yes,
requirement.
that was my
because
question
it
of
has to
you,
come
and
back.
I'm going, how can that be? So
Oh, I'm sorry.
we're on the
Next
same
time you
page.
can ask me, and I'll try
I'll
to
ask you
clarify.
again.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's redo that, and let's, if we may, since that's an error, what's the best? That's just a mistake.
If you just
so we want to
amend
clarify
that
it's on first
one that you just
reading.
voted for and just take out the
we may not
language
want to.
about the third,
That it's
the
on
three
first
readings,
reading.
you're fine.
Well, apparently they can't. You cannot legitimately do that since you have proposed that amendment on first reading, and they can't. How can you approve it if it's
I'm
amended?
not trying to get you to. I heard what you and I think the other city council people
Yeah.
heard the first time, which was we could do the amendment on first reading,
Yes.
and we could do the original motion on clear with three readings. I guess, is it back to me with whether or not I will include in my,
It's already a done deal.
No, Councilmember Steed proposed an amendment which was accepted.
On
and
first
it was going
reading.
to come back on first reading. So he's done, it's been amended. And now your original motion is that you have the proposal that Councilmember Kraus proposed with the amendment attached to it. So the only,
Basically on the first reading, though.
yes, so the only glitch was that it can't pass by waiving the third reading.
This is
So
just the
since
first
that
reading.
vote was a complete error and misunderstanding, how do we undo that from your legal perspective?
I'm not doing very well tonight, am I?
Rewind.
What I think you could do is that the maker of the motion,
Wayne.
which is Wayne Kraus, he could just simply say that he'd withdraw the part about the three readings and read by title only, have the seconder approve that, and then you just vote on that, and it should work. We bring it back next week with the changed language.
Madam Mayor?
That's how I understood it.
Madam Mayor?
That would be in two weeks. Yes, Walter.
Oh, sorry, 2 weeks.
The only not the only, but the reason that I agreed to a first reading on my amendment was my understanding that the original motion could pass and waive the three readings. If that is not the case, my agreement for my motion to be a first reading motion was done under incorrect information. Is there some way to rewind that? Now, Randy, let me just try this. You're looking at it as how do we get on through this and just put it all under a first reading. My point is that we may not want to do that.
Sure, and I apologize. If you've relied on bad parliamentary advice or my poor explanation, you can redo it because it was simply a mistake of the council.
So let me.
But I don't know what people want to do, and I guess that's what I was confused about.
Okay,
So-
I'm going to come back, since we passed that, Wayne, I'm coming back to you with the thing that Randy proposed originally, to say that you want to amend that motion to have it considered on first reading and as amended.
My motion was to do it under suspension of the rules requiring three complete readings, and I don't want to amend that.
Okay?
My vote would have been no on his amendment had I understood it as apparently it was. I misunderstood what you said also.
So I would entertain
Then I
a motion for
apologize.
reconsideration from the prevailing side. Would the maker of the motion like to do that and come back? Is that a correct, is that a parliamentarily
I
acceptable?
think it's one way to do it, yes.
Am I the maker
Wayne is the maker.
Of the amendment.
of the amendment?
Yeah, we're coming back to this. We're going to do this in reverse order, and it just makes sense to me. If we messed up on the last vote, because it was under that misunderstanding. Let's undo the whole thing. We'll undo the main motion, and we'll undo the amendment if the council so votes, and then we'll start all over.
Do we have to undo the
I
amendment?
think you have to
first?
undo the amendment first,
First.
because it attaches itself to the main motion.
Okay?
Maybe we can go back there and they can just wind everything.
Walter, go ahead. You want to make a motion for reconsideration?
Evelyn erased 12 minutes of Nixon, remember?
I will so move. Reconsideration of the amendment.
Second.
Okay, we have Walter's motion. Wayne's second. This is for reconsideration of the second.
Just
of the
to
amendment.
reconsider the amendment.
To reconsider the proposed amendment.
If I voted
Tim will start.
no, then I don't vote, right?
You can vote. You just
everybody
don't
can
get to
vote.
make the
Just
motion
say
for
yes if you want to
reconsideration.
reconsider it.
Okay,
Aye.
so we'll start with Tim.
Aye.
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 Aye,
And I.
Okay, the motion carries.
to reconsider.
Yes, for reconsideration. Walter?
Mr. Brown has his hand way up there.
Well, only because it's been 2.5 hours since we started. Is it inappropriate to take 5 minutes at this juncture?
I second Tim's motion.
I don't want any more water. I want to get rid of some water.
He wants to get rid of some.
So I would just ask that the city council not engage in further deliberation outside of this public meeting, and with that, we'll take a 5-minute recess. We'll reconvene at 9:35.